Alpha 3.1 went live last week, and I jumped right in and played about 2 hours over 2 days. The week's been busy, but mostly I've been trying to figure out how to put my thoughts together for 3.1. 3.1 was billed as mostly a fix update, patching the problems of 3.0 and 3.01, which I skipped thanks to the interdiction issues, as I called out previously. Sadly, interdiction is still a problem, but not so much of a debilitation as it was previously. That's an issue for another time, though. Updates. First, the Mobiglass. It got a complete new layout, which is great. It's much more easy on the eyes, it's easy to use, the blinding light at the bottom doesn't impact everything, so you can navigate around it, you can see what you're reading. There's still some bugs, it's not perfect, but the functionality is there. You can see the applications, you can use the applications now. So equipping loadouts, modifying your ship, using the actual nav buoys to find things, checking your health stats, it's very doable now. However, there are still some bugs, so in a moment I'm going to try to close the Mobiglass, and it for some reason just continually kept coming up. I would close it, it would pop up. I would close it, it would pop up. I would close it, it would pop up. And I had this happen 3 or 4 times, which was really weird because I could not figure out what was triggering it. Keys weren't stuck. It was just something in the game wasn't letting me get rid of it. So you can see it's down, it's up, it's down, it's up. So very annoying. Now, atmospheric effects were tweaked around a little bit. So when you come into atmospheres and you punch through them, it looked a lot better. The 2 times I went into the atmosphere, it was so much more believable. So, boom, you get hit with the atmospherics, you get hit with the atmosphere affecting the ship, the oxygen and everything as you pass through it at the high heat, the temperatures, the flame burn off. It was really good looking. And then I popped outside and you could see the trails coming behind the ship. It just really looked a lot better. Not that it looked bad before, it just things seem to look a lot nicer now. So good updates on that. Now, overall, the planets themselves haven't changed that much as far as shape and makeup and composition. Yila got a redo, but we'll look at that in a second. So I'm coming down here to the same place I've been many times running cargo missions, and lighting was a lot of fun here. They messed with some of the lighting, they tweaked some of the shaders, if I recall some of the around the verses, and the effects are pretty good. They're very subtle. So the ship landing light, you can actually see it now in the distance. I actually have a landing light, and it works, and it's pretty well. It's not the brightest thing at a distance, but as you get closer, it's brighter and brighter and brighter, and it really did a good job. The shadowing off the landing light wasn't perfect, but it really worked, and it was good. Now, as my ship comes in closer, and even if you look at my ship, you can see there's lower illumination off of my landing struts, illuminating them as well as what's below them. And you can see much more green and red light illuminating the starboard and port sides of my ship. So things looked a lot better. And boom, there's my landing lights for my gear coming in. And we set down on the ground. So I'm really pleased with the new lighting effects that they put in place. It's a lot better. Looks much more realistic. Now, ships getting stuck on the landing pad, that's been an issue for a long time, and it was kind of hit or miss, but in 3.0 and 3.01 especially, it was a big issue, much more so than previously. And I can say that so far in 3.1, I haven't really experienced this issue yet, so good on that. Now, network performance is still hit or miss. My first session, I hit an average of 55 FPS over an hour of gameplay, which was fantastic. However, that session was still plagued by FPS drops and minor lag hiccups. I had 2 bad lag outs, such as this one, where I got close to a reclaimer to take a look at it, and it lagged out for 20 seconds of just nothing. Now, having experienced this before back in 2.2 and 2.3, I just let it go for a while. The worst lag I ever had was 5 minutes, so I waited for it, and it came back, and everything played just fine. It actually got better, probably because a bunch of people got disconnected, so whoops. Now, some of the updated ground textures at Yila, they look really good. They really improved the feel of the planet. The way everything looks is much better. However, as I cruise around the surface here now and in the future, you'll see some of these little minor melting pools. and they really don't fit right. Some of them are placed on hills or on the side of a mountain. It's just texture alignment, just some minor things they just have to put in with elevation changes, but it looks a lot better, and I'm really pleased with the changes for Gila. It feels a lot more like a snow planet or a ball of ice now than it ever did before, and there's still rocks, so it's not like they did away with all of it. I just think it's a good improvement. Now, the HUD of the ship, you can see at the top left, is much improved as well. They've tweaked it to be a little more real-time. I'm only going to touch on that part of it because next time we're going to get into some of that with a combat video. Really show off what they did with that because I love it. And I figured that while I had good FPS, I would go use it. So I cruised around a lot of the surface for a while, which was a ton of fun. I've never really just flown around the surface. I did a little bit last time when I borrowed that guy's Dragonfly, but overall I really didn't just cruise around the surface, weave through any of the canyons, and it was a lot of fun. I did have a few dips down to 15 FPS and some minor lag hiccups, which were very annoying, but overall it was not that bad, and it was a lot of fun. The downside was the next day when I came into play, hoping to get another high FPS run, I was back down to my standard 23 to 25, maybe 28, 30 off and on average FPS, with some hiccups similar to my first day. No, they weren't quite as frequent. I was pretty disappointing, but it was still playable because, well, that's what we've had for so long. And I really hope to get more high FPS sessions in before long because it was a lot of fun to see things that smooth. And I believe they're bringing a patch 3.1.1 out before too long, which will hopefully clean up some of that as well as fix a lot of the issues that players are really complaining about. That we'll talk to in just a moment. I'm not expecting full optimization here this early into a pre-alpha type phase, but with how long it's been, I would really think they could have a steady target of 30 FPS minimum by now. Nobody should be getting less than 30 FPS. Now, flying around the surface was awesome. Atmospheric flight, it really isn't in there yet, so there's not really an oxygen-based atmosphere, especially on this planet, but it really doesn't affect the way you fly yet. But it's still good fun to cruise around the planet, even though drifting's a little bit of an issue. But it was a lot of fun, just like driving around the other moons in my Ursa back in 3.0. Just seeing the scenery, looking at the sights was a ton of fun. Now here I landed just to enjoy the view and take a look around because it was really pretty. And they had fixed multiple animations such as entering and exiting the ship. As you can see here, I actually got out of my Hornet properly, and when I got into my Hornet earlier, I actually climbed into the pilot seat instead of clipping through the pillar and sitting in nothing and then magically zooming forward into my pilot seat again. Which, that always bothered me. That never felt right and it didn't look right. Now, some of the other animations they worked on and dealt with some other funky issues were feet placement. It's a subtle change again, but where your feet are placed when you run, like actually on the stairs or when you're standing on an incline, your feet should actually be placed on the surface that you're standing on. So they've gone in and done a lot of work with fixing that, so it looks a lot better. And other animations they fixed, if you remember some of my previous videos where I'm jumping around like a goofy guy in the low gravity areas, my arms would flail around and I looked a little goofy and my feet would kick like I'm a little infant needing a nappy or something. In this one, that's really not the same type of a problem. It's still a little funny when I run around and you see my arms flailing about and you look kind of stupid, but it's much more realistic in that the motion, the way it stretches the mesh of the clothing and the way your body kind of moves, and you can kind of see the shoulder blades popping out, it looks for the most part much better. It's not perfect, as you can tell, but it's more balance oriented of what a real person would do if they jumped in a low grav situation, flinging their arms around trying to keep themselves balanced. So I approve. I like it. It's much better. My one lonely footprint, so something else they got to work on. I used to see a lot more footprints, but you can also see my feet aren't exactly touching the ground, so not perfect, but for a first implementation of that, it's much better, at least in this state. When you land, you still sometimes get stuck where you can't actually run, and it takes a moment. I think that's just them trying to assign your body back to the planet or back to the atmosphere, however the case may be, but oh well. All right, now taking off, I'm going to basically floor the afterburners and start slow because I'm down at the surface, and I'm just going to cruise over the surface for a little bit. And it's nice because you can see some of the biodiversity, or at least the biome diversity a little bit here. You've got the melting pools down there of the water, which is nice. And then you've got some of the hard rocky area and then some of the snow. And as we push further on out of the mountain range, we get into an open area where there's a lot of pits and issues from asteroids and things that have come down and hit the planet's surface. So it looks really nice and it's fun. And the stars have faded out from space because you're in the planet, but the bright ones are still visible. You've got the beautiful rings, and as I get up, you can start seeing more and more stars start to fade in, which is just a great effect. Now, Spectrum's been full of valid complaints about disconnects, drops, lag, low FPS, and financial issues, at least in-game UEC. Now, I thankfully haven't had any of those issues yet, though I have seen the financial problems, which is not bad. It's just things don't earn as much money as they used to overall. Ship cooldowns and such is just ridiculously too high for an alpha, or even at launch. No one should have to wait 8+ hours for a ship, which is like the Reclaimer. I mean, maybe for a big capital ship, a Bengal or something, but if that's all you've got, that's not very fun. Overall, 3.1 for my first time was good fun. I'm pleased with what they've done. I know, again, it's just a lot of subtle back-end stuff, but if they can maintain the performance that I had initially, then I'm going to play a lot of 3.1, and there's a lot to enjoy here. So lots of things to test and comment on still, so stay tuned, and thank you for watching.